After weeks of campaigning from the Labor government, Australians will now head to the polls for the first time in 24 years. And it's a big decision whether to change the Constitution or not. For many Australians, this will be the first time they've been part of a referendum. The Australian Electoral Commission has set a deadline for all parliamentarians to submit written arguments for and against the voice to Parliament. Today, Susan Ley once again demanded answers from the Labor government on which areas of public policy the voice would advise on.
Would the voice be able to make representations to the Chief of the Defence Force on military acquisitions or the location or operation of military bases?
I can tell you what the voice will not be giving advice on. It won't be giving advice on parking tickets. It won't be giving advice on changing Australia Day. They go low, we go higher.
The opposition is arguing that there's not enough detail being given to Australians about how the voice will work, who will sit on the body, and which areas of public policy it will give advice on. For more on this and the rest of the day's big stories, I'm joined by columnist and former Editor-in-Chief of The Australian, Chris Mitchell. Chris, great to see you. Look, from the polls, it's clear that the voice has now been quite divided amongst the generations. Gen Z seem to be the majority of the yes voters. Do you think this comes down to social pressure? And what do you think of the responses given by Linda Burney in Parliament over the past 2 days? Do you think the government is being transparent enough when it comes to the detail of how the voice will operate?
Yeah, hi Sharri, good to be here. Look, I think I wrote mid-year last year that the Carmer-Langton report made clear between pages 150 and 155 that the voice would be able to submit suggestions to government or ask questions of government on virtually any subject that affected Aboriginal people in any way whatsoever. So hence we saw Penny Wong go to the last election with somebody earmarked to be a voice foreign affairs specialist. Now it seems to me, you know, it's easy to call this misinformation or disinformation and to try and ridicule it the way Linda Burney did. But actually it's been an open question now for almost a year, and the government has been stuck, unable to answer that question. And we know that serious and leading voice advocates like Noel Pearson and Marcia Langton have said they think it's only proper that the voice be able to ask questions of government on any issue at all. And we know that they've said the voice should be able to appeal to the High Court. So these things that people who support the voice are calling disinformation, I think are not disinformation, and the government's strategy of going headlong into the question of a voice and endorsing the Uluru Statement without having thought through exactly what the voice would be has been exposed as a pretty poor way to tackle a referendum.
And what about this question of who would actually sit on the voice to Parliament body, the advisory group? I mean, we've seen reports this week. The video was played on Peter Credlin's show last night, and the story by Jeff Chambers in The Australian yesterday, that one of the members of the working group, the referendum working group, has made very controversial remarks calling John Howard a bastard. He's a militant unionist. You know, there would be concern that people like this might sit on the voice body. Do you think we need to know exactly who would sit on it before Australians go to a referendum?
Well, look, I think this is another sort of blank canvas that needs to be filled in. In Carmer-Langton, there are meant to be localised and state voices, and these are meant to send representatives up to the federal voice. Now, I discussed this issue with Noel Pearson as long ago as 2013, and that was the way Noel envisaged it working, that local Aboriginal people would be empowered, and that was his idea to make sure that regional Aboriginal and outstation Aboriginal people were heard. Now, I don't think it's really good enough to say just trust us on how we reach the voice and how people will be elected to it. Your point about Thomas Mayo's video, it's a well-made point. It's quite worrying. And, You know, it's okay for Thomas to say pay the rent, but that would be a spooky thing to be used in a referendum. And I think people like Jacinta Price and Warren Mundine could make a lot of that as we get closer to the referendum.